This is Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. We enthuse, we energize, we inspire, and we empower entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs of all stripes in BW and beyond. Jumela, hello, welcome. Another episode of Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. We're so excited. As always, we bring you impactful, life-changing information in the business arena, in the social arena, in the entrepreneurship arena. And this time I brought someone who should be familiar to you. He's been here before. His name is Apostle David Grace. We're going to talk about his new book, and we're also going to talk about my book. Another shameless plug. If you haven't got a copy already, you can get in touch with Josejo, my PA, at 397-1368, or get in touch with me on my WhatsApp, and we can arrange for you to get the book. So please support us. In addition to that, support yourself, because we try to share impactful information that will hopefully catapult the trajectory of your life in one way or the other. So with that having been said, do not forget to strike that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. If you've already done so, I thank you for subscribing, and I ask you to also hit the notification bell. Let me welcome you to the studio, sir.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mogobe. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a huge privilege for me. We have been trying to arrange for this interview for some time.
Yeah.
Since the last one. I think the last one was 2 years ago.
It was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
How time flies.
It just flies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Some may not know you as much as I know you, but just share your sort of condensed CV if you don't mind.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to talk to all of you followers of Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. My name is Apostle David Grace. Some call me Coach David Grace. Some call me Mr. David Grace because of the variety of things that I do. As an apostle, I'm a founder of Kingdom Embassy International, a church started in 2008, headquartered in Palape. We have 7 branches today across the nation, and a global footprint in terms of ministry. In our Facebook pages, in our social media handles, you can be able to follow us there. But I'm also in the business space as a businessman, and that is another area in my life of dealing with properties and dealing with mining and so forth and so on. And then I also have a successful club that is called Destiny Club, which deals with the university students. So we mentor and we coach thousands of university students, and also pay for those who retake, for those who have failed and they want to go back to school. That's basically in a nutshell what we do. Very, very exciting, and I'm privileged, in the interest of full disclosure, to say that I've shared a stage with you in one of your conferences, and that I'm a big fan, and I really want you to succeed. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I draw inspiration from you. Iron sharpens iron, and ever since I met you, I think each and every time I come and we spend time, I leave this place with inspiration. Absolutely. And I'm grateful. Thank you. Right. I think first things first, you attended the book launch for Mogobe Nuggets of Grit. What's your takeaway from the big launch, or having purchased the book? Anything you want to share? Of course, a lot that I want to share from the excellent, beautiful evening that we had. The speakers were amazing, and of course the man of the night was also amazing, the speech that you gave. But more importantly, the book itself, as I've started already reading the book, when you are listening to the book, you are hearing your story. And the story has been captured in your voice. You can almost hear you speaking in the book, which is something that is just amazing, because we have been around when we have heard some of these stories, and they've been captured beautifully. You're a powerful storyteller, and we are so grateful, because we know this is going to change a lot of people's life. I had to ask you that because you yourself has written a book which emphasizes the importance of storytelling. The title of the book is Your Story Sells. Yeah. Your Story Sells. I think the starting point is to help the viewer understand what motivated this book and what was the impetus for bringing it into existence. Thank you so much. My story begins from the humble village of Palape, where I was born on the 17th of May 1982, in my mother's little hut. I'm from Africa, and if you look at this book, I am in the cover with Les Brown, a legend, a man that has spoken to over 2.8 billion people around the world, a man that is known around the world. How does a boy born in the village of Palape in Africa end up in the same cover with such a legend? That's the power of the story, my own story, valuing my story from where I'm coming from, the things that I learned in my mother's house from my humble background, to the time that I met my Savior, the Lord Jesus Christ, to the time that I began to share my story with others, and it began to change people's life, and that began to promote me as it became a signature that a lot of people began to connect with this story, more especially from Africa and across the world, in the third world countries. And that promoted me because of the hunger to learn from those who are ahead of me. I ended up in one of the mentorship of Les Brown, and being part of that, one of the men that is responsible for ensuring that his conferences, his books goes out there, came up with an idea that what if we take the stories of people that Les Brown has impacted around the world and we share them with him in the same book. And that is how this book was born, and I was privileged to be the only African to be featured in this book from Africa, from Botswana. And it's such an incredible thing. It tells you about the power of a story when you value your own story. And amazingly, when I look at the story of Les Brown and my story, they have similarities, but we live in different continents. But we have gone through almost the same experience, and that may be the reason why we have been drawn to one another. And that may be the reason why I'm in this studio, because the story of Mr. Mogobe is almost as similar as my story, from the kettle post to a serial entrepreneur. Thank you.
This is very fascinating. Who reached out to who for this to happen?
Well, they reached out to me for this to happen. I received an email, and then I thought maybe it's a prank. Me? How is that gonna be? So then the gentleman ended up, arranging a video call, introduced himself. I looked at everything, it was legit, and then from there we began the process with the publishers of Les Brown. We began the process of beginning to draft our story. And for me it was simple because I'm already a writer, and so for me I was able to just deliver my story to them. They looked at it, edited it, and then put it as part of the book.
Okay. I'm sure they did edit it very little because you're an author.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Everything written there came from me, so they just edited a little bit because I've been writing books for some time now.
Okay. Now the beautiful thing about the book is that it's in hardcover, and also that it's got multiple authors. Did you get to interact with the other authors?
Well, that is going to happen next year. Next year, I'm going to be in America. I'm going to have the privilege to meet with Les Brown physically and meet with the team in preparation for the launch of the book, which I'm going to do in the beautiful land of Botswana. But before I do that, I'm going to travel to America and meet up with Les Brown. We're going to have some platform to share and speak to some people there in different platforms in America.
Okay.
Yeah.
Some of us grew up on a heavy doses of Les Brown's material. I mean, I can never get over his famous speech where he said, "You gotta be hungry.
Yeah.
You gotta be hungry."
Of course.
Walking up and down the stage. I mean, there must have been over 100,000 people on that stadium.
Yeah.
That's from what I could see.
Yes.
And that's probably 30, 40 years ago when he gave that speech.
Yeah.
But still, he's still going on. Have you spoken to him lately, and how is he doing?
Well, Les Brown is a fighter. He has gone through a lot and he has fought through it. I mean, his story is incredible. I think that's what makes him for people to be attracted to him, because of the different stories, from overcoming the fight with cancer to being born and see stories starting from that warehouse, him and his twin being given to a stranger, a woman who has to raise him up. He says one woman gave birth to him and then the other woman gave him love. So he had two mothers brought by God. And so his story is incredible. And I think at this particular moment, he is over 70. But if you look at him, he's still young, taking care of himself. And he is hilarious. He's fun. He's excited, and he's whole and healthy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've watched him on YouTube even in more recent times. He just has those quotations coming out of his head. The way he shares personal development information is incredible. Do you have a story of how he impacted you in your life originally, long before you became a co-author with him?
Of course. Like you say, every one of us grew up listening to Les Brown. My own story happened where I just lost in business, an initial business where I lost over 4.7 million in an investment. So, and now I was homeless. I was staying in a rented apartment which I couldn't pay, I couldn't afford, and I was given 3 weeks to just stay in that apartment.
Wow.
I had an empty plot somewhere. So one night, my wife and my children are sleeping, and I'm thinking, what am I going to do? I don't have money. I've lost everything. What am I going to do? And then I just went on YouTube, and then I met Les Brown's message. I've been listening to him, but that message that night made a difference because it struck a chord because of what I was going through. He said, it's not over until you win. And he said something. He said, some of you have parked. You have parked in the dark. You have parked without your hazard lights on. You have parked. But it's not over until you win. You have to get up. You have to fight. You have to fight until you win. And that night I woke up and I drew a plan and I went to my empty plot the next day with my family. They said, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to build a house. But they said, where is the money? I said, you're asking me a question of the Abrahamic order. When his son said, Father, I can see the fire, I can see the wood, but where is the sacrifice? And I said to them, the Lord will provide. And I remember I told them to build a building. We start by clearing the site. So we started clearing the site. When we finished, we marked where the building will be done, and we started digging. While we were digging, a couple came by. They wanted to see me, and they asked me, what are you doing? I said, I'm building. They just said, we just finished a multi-res and we have so much material left. We want to give it to you. And that's how I built a house for my family. That's how Les Brown has impacted my life when I thought it's over. I was doing well in ministry, but I was starting off in business, and the first thing that happened was I lost such amount of money.
Yeah. It's very interesting you should mention that particular story, because the way he tells it, he was playing with his son at night, and his son stopped him from... He kept winning, and his son said, no, it's not over until I win. And he says he learned this lesson from his son.
Yes.
You remember that part?
Yes, I remember that part.
Yeah.
I remember that part.
It's very, very interesting. Now, your specific story in the book is entitled My Identity, My Destiny. Talk about the title before you talk about the story.
Well, my identity, my destiny. Everyone has a destination ordained by God. He said, before you were formed in your mother's womb, I knew you and I ordained you. The word ordain means to predestinate someone. It means to set what the person will become in life. So in order for you to find the ending of your life, you need to be able to find who you are and what God has made you to be. So in order for you to fulfill your destiny, you must find who you are in this world where constantly people are trying to make you somebody else. Need to find who you are, because who you are determines the path, determines the relationships that you're going to have in life, determines the education that you need for you to be able to fulfill your destiny. And so actually my identity, my destiny is now being developed into a fully fledged book. It's going to be a fully fledged book that is helping people how to discover their God-given destiny. Yes.
And in the story, you share some of the anecdotes and lessons from your first book, which is The Anthill.
Yes, of course. My story is interrelated. And when you have a story, you share the part of the story that will be able to be relevant to a particular audience. So you have to craft your story in such a way that you know, if I'm speaking to people in business, what part of my story I need to use and what part of my experiences I need to use. So of course I share from the Anthill the same principles that are in the Anthill. Some of them I put them here because these are my core beliefs in what I share with people on a daily basis. And it starts first with your identity, which is your story. Your story is rooted in who you are, not what people say you are, not what people think you are, but who you are, discovering who you are. You remember the words of Jesus Christ? He said, whom do men say I am? Now he was referring to the community, the environment around him. They had a name for him.
Yes.
Then he asked people very intimate to him. He said, okay, let's leave that people are saying I'm Jeremiah, I'm Elijah, risen from the dead. But you guys around me, you that are close to me, my brothers, my sisters, my siblings. So who do you think I am? And Peter had to draw inspiration from God to see who Jesus really was. And he said, thou art Christ, the Son of the living God. So it's important that in this life, you don't wear the labels that people give to you. You need to have the revelation of who you really are. And that's where your story starts from.
Is that where the issues of vision and mission come in? Your vision for your life as well as your mission in life?
Yeah, I think what happens is that people wants to see someone else. They look at you and they see your story and they're inspired by your story, but they want to mimic that story. They don't realize that the first thing that you did was you went inside and found out who is Mr. Mogobe. You went inside and found out your abilities and your God-given gifts, and that set the path for your life. Every one of us, we have a path to success. It's different from the other, but your story can inspire me to find who I am. But if I try to be a cheap copy of a great original, I will never become. So if you don't know who you are going to go to the wrong school, you are going to marry the wrong person, you are going to do the wrong thing in life. So it starts with who are you first. Find who you are, then educate who you are, not who you think you are. Educate the right person. Yes, that is where it starts.
Is there a particular skill set involved, or is it something that somebody can learn from the book in terms of discovering who you are and discovering your destiny? Is it something you have to do to make that discovery?
Of course. It says, be still and know. You need to come to a dimension where you understand that when Saul was looking for the donkeys in the Bible, it says he met a prophet, and the prophet said a very powerful statement to him. He said, come with me and I will show you what is in your heart. Why? Because the Bible says God has put our destiny in our hearts, inside all of us. The destiny of an orange is in the orange seed. It's inside it. So our lives, just like the seed, comes from the inside out. So if I'm going to discover who I am, I need to listen inside. And then I need to ask myself this question: what makes me cry? What makes me angry? What am I passionate about? What do I believe I can solve in this life? When you begin to listen to all those things, you begin to write them down. I usually give people this assignment. Take 1 hour and write in 1 hour with a time clock. Write everything you think you can do in this life. Write it down. People never finish that hour. Some of them are stuck with 2-3 things. In a silent room, they cannot even write up to 10 things that they can be in life. But if they try harder, when they have written the 100 thing, I say to them, now take out of 100, 10 of the best things that stand out. And out of the 10, then take the best 3. And out of the best 3, take the number 1 thing that stands out of that. And let that become the beginning of your destiny.
Wow. It's beautiful you're saying that, because a lot of your mentees call you coach.
Yeah.
And some people may not know that aspect about you. And I feel I'm getting coached as you share your story. Just share with the viewers how the name came about, and if you're doing any actual coaching as one of your many talents that you are.
Yes, I am a professional coach. I have studied coaching with John Maxwell University, and I have actually graduated in Orlando, Florida, in John Maxwell Institute. Some people have seen my photos of me with John Maxwell. It's another story, just like Les Brown. It's like all the people that I follow and see in life, eventually I end up in their presence. So that's how I became a coach, because there is an institution, there is a university. If you just go to a John Maxwell team and you just write David Grace there, he's one of the professional coaches you can book around the world. So if you're in Africa and you just do that, you'll find me there. Then I also studied with the University of Cape Town, executive coaching, and then training executives and all that. So it's something that I'm doing professionally. So if you can see, I don't do a lot of speaking and a lot of speaking meetings. I do a lot of coaching. I spend most of my life coaching
one-on-one
people,
or smaller
one-on-one
groups?
and smaller groups. And that's how I approach the whole thing. I believe in disciple making. Jesus had 12, and the highest limit a man can raise is 120. The rest you can only inspire, but these ones you can transform.
Where do you get that? That's very interesting.
It's from the model of Jesus in the Bible. He chose 12 people, and then in the day he was to leave, there were 120. But in John 6, we see him, through his teaching, chasing the multitude away. And then he remains with these ones. These ones were interested in the principles of his life. The multitude were interested in his miracles. They were not ready, because somebody who depends on a miracle is not ready to learn the principle of living the miracle every day. Learning the principle of living the miracle every day, for example, if you are a giver, you are going to live the miracle of it being given to you, a good measure, pressed down, shaken together every day. You don't have to pray and say, Lord, give me. You initiate your harvest by your seeds. So the same way, Jesus had 12 men that he spent time, indoctrinated them, brainwashed them, and poured himself into them, that they became exactly his model. But then he pushed them only to 120. And that 120 people, in the book of Acts, he says, these are the men who have turned the world upside down. 120 people that look like Jesus, thought like Jesus, they were part of his disciple. Yes.
They did change the world. I mean, look at Christianity now and what it has done. And how mankind has been saved by it.
Without all the gadgets that we have today. He poured himself into those men. They were living tablets. They were living, cell phones in his time of the teachings. And they have preserved them, that today we're able to correctly articulate what Jesus said in that time, because those guys paid attention. You see, multitude can come. Like I tell people, you can see millions of people following Les Brown. You can see thousands of people following Mr. Mogobe. But why are those people not becoming successful? Because they are just multitudes. When they become disciples, it is an intimate, close-to-close encounter where you are able to even measure the progress of those people's life.
That's very true. I want us to go back to my story. Would you help the viewer without maybe discouraging them from buying the book? Just say enough. Just say 2 or 3, if you can call them nuggets or snippets of your story, which you're willing to share.
There is power in stories. When you hear a story of a man, you are hearing the secrets that made that man to be who he is. As somebody said, the secrets of men are in their stories. Now, you will never know me until you hear my story. I have shared I was born in a very poor family, where we had somebody one day was hearing me talking about my mother's heart. He said, but people in Botswana were born in mud huts and so forth. But I said to him, not all of them became multimillionaires. And not all of them got to travel the world the way I am, and got to be able to do the things that I am doing. So, like in your book, you quoted a very powerful quote. It's not where you start, it's where you end. That's the power of a story. So inside here, I'm sharing a story, and here is the context of it. I tell people that when you watch somebody in another country or in another continent and you hear their story, the story can inspire you, but you don't have the context of that story because they live in a different world from yours. First world, third world. But if I listen to a story of a man that I can find in CBD, it's a man I can look at. When you are talking about a kettle post, I know what is a kettle post. But if an American is giving an example in their book about how they grew up, it's very difficult for you to be able to contextualize in their mind the environment that they lived in. It's like reading the Bible, but you don't know the background of the Hebrews. So you are reading that from a modern day era. Let me give you a simple example. The story of Abraham. People said he lied and said Sarah was his sister. And it's popularly known like that. But if you read the chapter before then, you are going to find that actually Abraham married his half-sister. So he didn't lie.
It wasn't a lie.
Yes. In those times, people married their half-sisters. The son of Abraham, Isaac, Abraham said to his servant, go and find a wife for my son from my brother's house. So Isaac married his half-sister. So when he repeated and said his wife was his sister, he was not lying. But if you don't have that context, you are going to say he lied.
Yes.
You understand? So I can hear a story that is inspirational, but I can't place it in my life. But if I hear the story of Mr. Mogobe, I can place it there. I can place Kanye in my mind. So when I read in your book, I read about a familiar territory. And this is what happens in my internal system. If this man can make it in this desert country of Botswana, I can make it. So the stories of men that are in our environment, they hit home than the distant stories of men that we may have not lived in their environments.
Yeah, one thing you mentioned is that the fact that your mother raised 6 of you, and she was a single parent, correct?
Yeah.
So what is that about that hardship that in a way contributed to your story, contributed to you becoming the person that you are?
You know, I said this morning and I read the first few pages of your book, and you were talking about your mom, and you talked about that time women were not allowed to go to school. And I remember very well my mother would say this story as long as she lives. She's 74 years old today, and she says, I wanted to go to school, but my parents said only my brothers can go to school. So my mom ended up having to take care of cattle and goats. And then when she brought us to this world, she had to now have a shabin. She has to brew traditional beer. And out of that money, she bought for herself a sewing machine so she can alter the clothes of people at that particular time.
Make a bit of money.
Yes, and then later she went to what we call tutorairolele, and she went from standard 1 to standard 4. That's how far she could go. But you can see that this woman, if she has gone to school, she'll be an industrious woman. She'll be a very successful woman, but she was denied that. But anyway, the way my mother raised us up, even though she was alone, she loved us. And I believe that she gave us the love. I tell people that I cannot measure the input of my mother using today's world. I can only measure her success in parenting us using the circumstances where she was in at that time. And she tried, because I am here today and I am shining. She has given me a platform for me to be able to shine.
Oh, this is so beautiful. This is so beautiful. As part of the story, you became a runner and a mule for local gangsters. That really surprised me when I saw it. What does it mean, and how did that impact you? And more importantly, how did you escape that setup?
You grow up around Shabin, you start drinking from childhood. You grow around rough characters. I remember my mom used to try to protect us. She used to try to protect us, and she would say at lunchtime she would close her shabin maybe for 1 hour, trying to come and give us food and everything. But we were well exposed to all these characters and all these people that were coming to her yard for beer and so forth. And it is in the shabins that all kinds of drugs are being sold. And we had a neighbor who lived a secluded life. You know, this man lived in his house by himself, no windows and everything. But he had a nightlife. So all around where I grew up, I mean, if you look at Palape, Palape is famous for some notorious, criminals that you can think of. So, you are growing up around that environment. So when you are young, somebody comes and tell you, take this package and then go to this particular place. And when you get there, somebody comes and slap you, and they don't even say anything to you, and they take the package from you. You don't even know what you are holding. You go crying to the man. The man laughs and says, forget about it, and he gives you money. And this now, the sweetness of, okay, I get a package, I go out, I'm slapped, I get money. You get, later in life, that's when I understood that this man was using us as transport for very deadly things, for drugs and everything. Drugs today, it's a serious problem in our country.
Very serious.
And children are introduced by people who are not far from their homes, from their families. Their neighbors who are introducing children to that. And so this story of my life, I kept it for a long time. People are hearing it now at this age.
I was surprised.
But this particular guy is dead by this time around that we're speaking this. He died. Yeah.
Oof. And tell them why your mother had to say, finally, the devil is gone to church.
When I was that child that I will ask my mother questions that will make her cry, the question of where is my father made my mother to cry. So I met my mother at the age of 29. When I'm already married, I have a son. Because the question brought
Meaning,
pain.
how many years without seeing each other?
I didn't know my father from birth until I was 29 years old.
Okay, so you met
And
your father for the first
he
time.
was 44 kilometers away from me in a village of Soroe, not even far from me. But asking my mom that question, it was a question that brought pain to her. So I told myself I will not ask her this question
Again.
But that made me angry that a man brought me to this life and did not want anything to do with me. So I made up my mind that because we are in poverty, I'm going to be a criminal. That's the only way to become famous. That's the only way to have money. That's the only way to become successful. So if you grow up in a place where criminals or people that are bad are being celebrated, or you see them, then that becomes the norm. Every child wants to grow up being a criminal because criminals are celebrated. Criminals are on radio. You know, people talk about them. It's a cool life. Yes, you will die with a gun wound one day or so on. But I made up my mind that's what I was going to be. So I left my mother's traditional church and started becoming terrorizing people in my neighborhood. And during the day, I'm a different person. At night, I'm a different person. So my mother ended up finding out that I was living this kind of life, and people were coming to her. Your son did this to us. Your son did this to us. He took these things from my child when I sent them to the mall, because I would grab people and take stuff from them and all those things. And so I was involved in street fights. I remember one day we were chased by the police in Letagane. It was midnight, and the police have parked 2 cars in the middle of the road because they were looking for all these notorious boys. And we crossed right in the middle of the light of the police cars, and they chased us. In jumping the fence, I miscalculated. So this droppers, just went straight into my thigh. And I was hanging there, head upside down, with blood gushing all over my body and in the dark. And I didn't have to move, because if I moved, the police were going to catch me. So finally, when I was drunk,
that's a terrible experience.
Yeah, when I was drunk, I was sleeping in my aunt's unfinished hut. It was up to 1 meter wall. And I told them, nobody should disturb me, I want to sleep. Then all of a sudden, I hear a voice calling me. It was so strong that I just jump up. If you are in a hangover and your head is pounding, you want to sleep. I wake up and I look around, nobody. I was ready to fight whoever is waking me up. So I went back to sleep again. The voice called me the second time. Nobody around. The third time.
Just loud as I'm talking to you.
Just like you are talking to me. And the third time this voice called me, I freaked out. My life started playing before me. For the first time in my life, I realized the things I'm doing, they are bad. For the first time in my life, I have a conviction that I was not living like a normal human being. And that voice spoke to me and told me, you are going to go to church. And I started answering that voice. There was a compelling force in me to answer that voice. And I was told to go to the community hall. Community hall is where there are clubs on Friday and Saturday. I can't imagine a church there. But anyway, I went there on Sunday, and then I found a church there. The pastor preached, and he said, if you want to give your life to God, come. And I gave my life to God. I didn't know what that meant. But that's when my journey of 24 years of transformation started.
Wow.
To where I am today.
That was 24 years ago.
That's the 1999.
Oh, this is wonderful. The more you tell it like no other person, it shows that your story really sells. And I'm sure when you share it with your audiences, they're electrified.
Of course, I get to see, and this is part I get emotional, when I get to see young people who were bitter also that their fathers were not present in their life. So when you get into the atmosphere of my church, people call me dad, literally in the literal sense that I have to play the role of being a father to children that nobody's interested in their school reports, nobody's interested in what is happening to them, nobody's explaining what is poverty stage to them. I have to sit down and talk with these young men, what they are going through and so forth. So I have this huge task of fathering thousands of people. To do it, you have to have a system in place. And so that's basically what is happening. So my story is impacting other young people who are born. By the way, 70% of young people in this nation don't have a father.
Don't tell me. 70% are born outside wedlock.
They are born outside wedlock.
That's a ridiculous
in
number.
This country. And this is why people are bitter. They don't want to talk about it, because in Botswana, when you talk about mental health, people think that mental health means you are crazy. So people don't want to talk about that. They would rather resort to drugs. They would rather resort to anything that will try to numb that feeling for some time. I told my brother that I'm going to be a soldier for the only one reason, to kill my father. I was going to kill my father.
To join the army for that reason?
Yes, for that reason. I was going to hunt my father and kill him. Now, me and my brother, my brother has a different father. We all have different fathers.
All six of you.
Yes. So now, my brother never related with his father because of me. I got born again. I ended up reconciled with my father, but because of what the inspiration as a big brother
And
that
you
we
completely
vowed.
abandoned the idea of killing him.
Yeah, because when I
you've
met
been born
God,
again, yes.
then the transformation came, the idea of fatherhood started, and forgiveness started, and so then I realized that if God forgave me for the things I did, why should I not forgive this? But unfortunately, my brother's father died without him reconciling with him any day, because we had a vow that we were going to kill these guys.
And he never accepted Christ, your brother.
We are still working on him.
Oh, he has never.
And obviously, that is one bitter part of his life. I think people don't understand that it takes two parents to raise a child.
Yeah.
When the other part is not there, it just takes a child and makes them dysfunctional, unless they have mentors or people that can be able to help them deal with the fact, did my father leave because of me? Did he leave because there was something wrong with me? Why will my father have to leave? At some point, to even end up hating, women. Did a woman take my father from my mother? You end up having that kind of mindset in you, unless you get into an environment such as church or a place where they can be able to now walk through this journey to accept that maybe the greatest blessing was for your father to bring you to this life, but to raise you, maybe it could have messed up your life. It's a blessing that is not there in your life at this particular time.
Can be a blessing. All right, you mentor so many people. It's difficult sometimes to remind oneself that you also have mentors.
Yeah.
Tell us about KK and why is that an important mentor for you?
He's an important mentor for me because I learned fatherhood from him. By the way, he fathers his children. He has 4 children. I learned marriage from him. That is the closest marriage.
How did you come into interact with him?
I was in the University of Botswana. I was doing information systems. So in 2005, on September, I was invited to Winners Chapel, which was in Helisilas Road, just across from here. And so I went there. I was invited by my girlfriend, who is my wife today. So we went there, and I see this man. He was an extraordinary pastor, not just coming to the church to teach the word of God. He will take 25 minutes and talk about business before he preaches on any other topic. Then the next time he will talk about 25 minutes about family, marriage, and everything. All these topics that matters. I think he did a research in Botswana and found the gaps, the things that people are suffering from, because he had a counseling form. So when you write in the counseling form, he called tally. Divorce is a problem in Botswana. Fatherlessness is a problem in Botswana. So he coined his messages around this topic, because you can't have all this crowd come into your office.
And you don't speak to them.
You have to now speak to all of them, so that it's like a group coaching, because you can't deal with 400 people at the same time. So I met him here in Botswana. He was from Nigeria, from Winners Chapel. Is a big
Full
church.
name is Korede.
It's Korede Komaya. Yes, he currently based in Wari. He's now running his own ministry. It's called the Master's Place International Church. They just moved into their 5,000-seat auditorium just this past weekend.
Wow.
And so this is the man that becomes a model of a leader, of a pastor, of a father. And he had a program called Business 1000. He said, before I leave Botswana, I'm going to raise 1,000 businessmen. And I'm one of them today, and several others in the country who started business, and we learned it from church. Yeah.
And is that in fact a business, a biblical principle? Because I read that Saul, for instance, was a tent maker as well as being an apostle that he was. Is this important for priests and for church leaders to have a business element?
Of course it is. That is actually the part that the world is trying to discourage the church from. But if you look at the model in the Old Testament, I'm currently doing my associate degree in theology. So I'm studying this Hebrew background and so on. There were 12 tribes in Israel. 11 tribes were industrious. They were doing business. But the 12th tribe, what the Levites, was the tribe of the pastors, the ministers, if you were to use the word of today. So all the 11 tribes, everything they made from the business world, they shared 10% of it with the tribe that was responsible for priesthood, teaching the word of God and all that. So it was 11 to 1. So if 11 tribes are giving one tribe 10% of their profit. It means this tribe became the richest. Because it has to deal with now taking the money as the priesthood into philanthropy. They had to take care of the widows, the orphans in the society. They had to take care of all social ills. That was the mandate of the priest and so on. So that's why today the Jews are still the richest people on planet Earth, because they do that. They still take 10% of their money and they give it into a Jewish fund, which helps to help around the world. Now, for the modern day men like me, we are not Jews, we are Gentiles in the Bible, any other tribe. So now, are there models in the Bible that we can use to be able to raise money to be able to minister to people in our world? Definitely. There's no way you can minister to people in the 21st century, an economic world, without money. So churches that have money are making a lot of influence. But for a priest to start business, there are two models. You can collect offerings from people, or you can use the Paul's model. Paul said, I had opportunity to take an offering from people, but I didn't use it. With my own hands, I began to labor and do that. Then you should know that in the church world, in Botswana, church is a society. But in another country, church is a business. It's registered as a business. So there's a difference.
Tax exempted.
It's tax exempted, but it's a business. It runs business operations and so on. But in Botswana, the church is a society. And this is the argument that goes around in Botswana. Why are people collecting money? Because if it's a society, it's going to survive by donations and so on.
Yes.
And the donation are going to be dependent on the financial status of the people that comes to that church. So other churches are going to do well depending on who comes to them. Others will not do well. So for me, when I left the university, I planned to go to Australia and do my second degree in music and then marry a white lady. That was my plan.
Originally.
Yes, that was my original plan. But I ended up marrying my yellow bone, as I call her. And then we went and did a church in Palape. So I said to myself, now this woman and my children, are they going to live from handovers from church members? Then I decided I'm going to be a businessman so that I can leave a wealth for my children and for my wife. So I began to start business in order to sustain my family. But at the end of the day, today, I'm among the top givers in my church.
This is wonderful. So you've taken the Levites model and Paul's model and you've added them up, as it were, and you adopted the two. You've amalgamated them. It's sort of hybrid.
Yes, it's a hybrid system. So what we do, we raise business people, and then while we raise them, we help them from idea generation to designing the business, to implementation of the business and mentorship. That's what I'm doing in the church. All the multimillionaires in the church were raised by me. I trained them from zero to where they are, and then I teach them the same model. With the profits of my business, I give to the church. So they also give to the church, and then we take care of others. We have a big welfare program to take care of the needy, to take care of the poor, and we send a lot of students back to school who have failed, including the university, as I'm saying. You see children who are in drugs and everything, first year, second year, they fail not because they are not smart, but because they don't have mentors. So we take them through Destiny Club, we train them, change their mindset. Once we trust you, we take you back to school and bridge, because you remember the government of Botswana says, if you have failed like that, there's a bridging year where you have to pay for yourself before the government can be convinced to pay the rest. So we bridge that year by paying for these people, and then later they excel and the government takes over and finish up the whole scholarship.
Okay. Are there any particular examples that you are particularly proud of that you can maybe talk about? Some people may be watching. They don't know you, they're a bit skeptical, they don't know what's going on. I have met some of your mentees and I could give you a few examples, but I'd like it coming from you, people that you're particularly proud of. I think a little shout out to them would be nice.
In leadership, we have different kinds of leaders. Currently, I'm teaching on Destiny 1-on-1, and I'm teaching on the temperaments. We have 4 different types of temperament. There are people who are melancholic, which means they are reserved. They are creative people who give us art, who solve problems and so forth. Then we have cholerics, people who get things done. So the melancholic designs things and then they give to the cholerics to implement them. Then we have the sanguines who market the product, who goes out there. They are the brand, they're the face of an organization. Then we have the phlegmatic. I happen to be a melancholic, a very reserved person. I'm an introverted person. So the reason why a lot of people does not know about me is because I don't put my stuff out there and say this and this is happening in my organization. I'm just in my corner there with my clients. It's like people who sells Rolls Royce. They don't advertise in the public space because they know their clients. And that's what I do. But I am proud of all my mentees, more especially in the Destiny Club. People that have taken the teachings, they have made them their own. Now, this year, Destiny Club hosted 5 schools, 1.6 students. The budget was 679,000. This is not from the government. This is money coming from people in our community who may have been impacted and say, when it's a cost to change other young people, we were changed by the same man. So we're able to host these people together with Boost being our center where we are operating from, because Destiny Club started from there. And the headmasters and the deputy heads of all the schools that we invited. So I'm proud of Destiny Club because we did our first youth initiative in Palape. But next year we are looking at 10,000 students coming to Palape and being taught. And we break them into all the smaller groups. And then the good part about it is that the lecturers is not David Grace. The trainers are now, it's peer-to-peer training, peer-to-peer mentorship. So these university students, they are mentoring senior school students. Senior school students are mentoring junior secondary school students. And junior secondary school students are mentoring primary school students. So we have this overlapping model. So I am super proud of these guys, and they work hard. Even right now, I left them in Palape. They are on a plenary session since Monday. And they're updating me on the plans that they want to do next year in taking Destiny Club across all the universities in the country, all the schools in the country. Then we will go to SADC, then we'll go to the 4 corners of the world.
Sounds so fascinating. So you're really raising disciples, like you mentioned earlier. Speaking of Palape, it is becoming a hub, is it not? Are you, and whether it's intentional or inadvertent, it seems to me as if Palape is becoming an entrepreneurial hub. Is it something you're working on, or is just sort of, do you want to say a word or two about that?
Yes. 2005, February and March, I was on a 40-day fasting. And in that 40-day fasting, I saw Palape become a city. Literally, I saw buildings erupting in Palape. I was raised in Palape. I know it's a village at that particular time. This is 2005. And I wrote it down on a paper that Palape is going to be an industrial city. It's going to be a place where manufacturing and businesses is going to happen. So I began to write it down. And I heard God telling me, go to Palape and raise me a people that are going to take care of the city when Palape becomes a city. Now, there was no Boost by that time. There was no Mateo Mine. There was no all these things that you see in Palape was Palape, a transit place where people pass. There was no malls. It was just fields there. Like I wrote in the untill, it was just fields. But today Palape is lined up with malls. And we haven't seen anything yet. Because what we are cooking in my mentees is going to place Palape in a place that is like Johannesburg. It's going to be a hub of activities. We are busy right now.
It's going to be like Senton.
Sir? It's going to be like Senton. So we are busy doing that. Some of the things I've already shared them with you. I'm the one who is leading the way in showing these guys that you are getting educated in the university, but you can take your education and turn it into a practical product that can create employment. It's not up to the government. The government has done its part. You have a university, you have the equipment, you can do research, and then we can transform Palape into what it is. Our dream is to see Palape being named the 3rd city of this republic. And so our mandate in the next 10 years is to do that. And by not just, so we have research on what makes a village to become a town to become a city. And so in all those spheres, we want to see one of us being in that stream in order for us to complement what will make Palape's economy to be one that can be named the economy of a city.
Largely, infrastructure is an important key ingredient, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, are there any infrastructure projects you have in mind, or it's too early to talk now?
I am cooking something, and I have come to a place like this for inspiration. I've tiptoed into this place to receive the anointing for property. But anyway, we starting 2024. I think we've been dreaming a lot. Now, 2024, we want to handle the issues of property and infrastructure in Palape. It's no longer a dream. We have several sites that we want to see coming up and the good part about this site is that it's not my site. I have used the very thing you're talking about at the book launch, gathering people together to buy a property and develop it into a sustainable, enterprise. And that's what we are doing. We want to show the power of the unity of Botswana coming together to do something that we can look at and we can see the community using, and also at the same time generating profit for investors.
Yeah. This is great stuff. Now, when you were last here 2 years ago, you had just launched a book called Untill, and there was a vibe around that. Once I posted on social media, and the followers were going up.
Thank you so much.
Tell me about your journey in those 2 years and what it became of that book and what impact it has had.
Untill was a book that was written for 20 years. It's a very personal book to me. Up until then, I've written books that focus on church and inside the church and empowering people in the church. I have had successes with that, more especially my book, The Triumph of the Second Adam, when I began to show people that there were two Adams actually in the Bible. The first Adam was in the Garden of Eden, but the second Adam was in the Garden of Gethsemane. Both of them were faced with temptation, and the temptations are similar. All of them were going to impact the future of humanity. The other Adam failed, but the other Adam conquered, and that's what we became. That book, I printed 10,000 copies to the glory of God. All of them today are sold out. They are all over this country. That shows you the impact of being able to encourage people to read and actually taking the books to read them. Now, coming to Untill, it's a book that I intentionally wanted it to be a book that speaks to somebody in the church and the unchurched. So in order to do that, I had to do a lot of research. I had to educate myself. I had to come under mentorship or be able to do, non-fiction creative writing. And when I've done that, then I penned the principles in the Untill to speak to somebody in the church and outside the church. The impact has been phenomenal, both in the church and outside the church. I receive a lot of people looking for our offices, looking for me all over the places, and they recognize me. I'm an ant man. They call me the big ant wherever I go,
the big ant.
And they call me the big ant. So many international visitors who have come and have had the ideas behind the ant. And for me, I say, if you are from Botswana, you are not among the big five. The big five are out there. There are people whose environment supports you to be a multimillionaire easily. But we are ants. Ants, they stay in your house. You pay rent, but they stay in your house. You buy grocery, but they eat your grocery with you. So I've coined a statement, building my empire in silence. That is, I don't have to reveal much of what I am doing right now because I'm not yet strong enough against the attraction that I can bring to myself. So we are doing underground network of young people that are building things there in the corner, and we are learning and failing in the secret so that one day we will shine in the open. That is the whole secret behind the Untill.
And the sales were good, isn't it?
The sales were good. The book was sold out even before it came. The pre-orders, they took all the books.
Are you planning a second edition?
Of course,
How
I am.
soon?
Actually, we are working on, the book is a trilogy. So I am actually writing, Here Comes the End. The power of collaboration. And now you cannot succeed alone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, you had an annual event which I participated in. And most people don't know about it because it's limited to your mentees. Is there no sense in which you wonder how big it can grow if you opened it up to your non-mentees and to the general public? Or there is a reason for keeping it that way.
Yeah. There is a day of Pentecost for every organization. The day of Pentecost is where 120 became 3,000 in a day. The time is crucial. When the multitude come, they must find my disciples as the model of the culture we are trying to raise. So we have targets that every one of our mentee must meet, so that in that particular time, it is no longer Jesus in the building talking to the multitude, but the lifestyle of the disciples is the one that is sharing the culture of who Jesus was with other people. So I've closed these people in the upper room, and I'm working on them, and I'm identifying the spaces that they are going to be into. There is a time we are going to hold international conventions that we're going to open up to the public. But at this moment, we're having our upper room experience, where I'm having this limited group of people that I'm working on and transforming their mind. And this is a lot. It's we don't just do trainings. Next year, the first quarter, we are taking my mentees. Some of them have never been inside a car like a Range Rover or a Mercedes-Benz. So what we have planned next year is to take them on exposure trips, to sit in luxurious cars, to fly in an aeroplane. We're going to charter a whole aeroplane and put these people inside and fly to a secret location where they are going to experience first-class experience in a hotel for the first time. This is for them to move from theory to feeling, the experience of being in a hotel for the first time. I cannot forget mine. I was called by Debswana when I was 18 years old, and we had 300 people for that interview, and out of 300 I was chosen among the two. I was to study in Botswana for 6 months and 4 years in America. And when I was there, Debswana hired a hotel for me. I stayed in a hotel. I could now do, for the first time in my life, I have to call my mom from a phone in the bathroom. I have poured water inside. The foam was up to, I was a tycoon that day. And I called my mom and I said, Mom, we have made it. And you know, Debswana is an incredible company. They were offering free accommodation, free gas, free electricity, a car. At that time, coming from a poor family, that was something that I was to take. But when I called my mom to tell her I was employed, she said the letter from university has come. Now you should know that a year before I could not afford 60 puller to apply to UB. So my group mates, my age mates whom I finished with went to the university because I could not afford that. But the next year I paid and I applied to UB. Before UB could respond, Debswana called me. So I had an offer here. So now my mom calls me and he says, there is a letter from UB. And that voice that called me when I was drunk told me, drop Debswana's offer and go to UB. Because in UB, you will meet people. And here I met my wife, I met my pastor, and I met my destiny of what I'm doing today.
It's such a beautiful story. I'm totally mesmerized. The only question that can pop into my head after such a presentation is, how do people position themselves to hear that voice that to you speaks to you with such clarity? Is there something you need to do to position yourself to be able to talk to that voice?
Just like every one of us is designed to hear the voice and the language of our mother and our father, human beings are designed to hear the voice of God. It's all around us. We may call it different things, intuition, we may call it this and that, but that is actually God speaking to people. I tell people, many people before they had an accident, the voice said to them, don't get in this car, don't travel. But the appointment they had was more important than the voice that was telling them, don't go. And they died in an accident. Before something evil could happen. There are people who have been told, leave this chair. Immediately they left it. The whole ceiling crumbled there. There was an inner voice. People always say, something told me. That something told me. It is God speaking to your conscience, directing you. Before you entered into a relationship that abused you, broke you down, there was a voice inside of you telling you, don't go into this relationship. Don't go into this journey. So what we need to do is to learn to harvest that voice. And the more we listen to it, the more we are familiar to it, or we become conscious to say, oh Lord, direct me. And then we listen. He will speak and tell us what to do. It doesn't have to be angels flapping their wings or a gold dust in the room.
Yeah.
It's just there in your conscience that you know that you know. The day you met me, the day I met you, I could know in my heart, because it's the same way Elizabeth and Mary met. There was a leaping. When you meet somebody for the first time, and that is a destiny helper, is somebody that you have to walk the journey with, there is an excitement, there is a goodness that happens around this area of your being, that you just know this is the right thing to do.
So we need to pay attention. And
we
be more
need
conscious.
to pay attention. We live in a noisy world, and we being still in our world. I mean, we don't know how much noise is in this city until, I mean, even at night, there's so much noise. Sometimes you need to get out to the outskirts of the city, which I do. I ensure that I take time, maybe 3 days. I go to a secluded place where, I mean, for us, it doesn't have to be luxurious. We have Massimus. We have all these places that you can go to and sit next to Mogobe or sit next under a tree somewhere. And as the birds are chirping around and the crickets, you know, and the birds and the frogs are singing, and you listen. At that moment, begin to value your thoughts, because those thoughts, they are higher thoughts that are coming from somewhere. And as you begin to write them down, you're going to begin to see that someone is actually giving you a message every single day of your life. We may not be listening, but God is speaking. Right now, there are radio waves inside this building. Just because we have not tuned in does not mean there are no radio waves here.
Wow, this is so powerful. I appreciate that for myself. I really think what you've just said is really profound. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, when is the next World Creation Summit, and what can we look forward to there? Those of us who are your disciples.
The next World Creation Summit is coming next year in October. It happens every October without fail. For the past 15 years, we are running this, and we are working on ensuring we just have a target of by the time we reach 20 years. That's when now we are going to push ourselves into a dimension where we go out to the people. But year by year, we are looking forward. And this time around, we want to change location. We want to take people to a place where, so my team is working around many ideas. Should we go to Sandton? Should we go to Cape Town? Should we go to Namibia, Kasane? All those things. So I've left it to them to decide where they want to take this thing and how they want it to be designed. But this time around, we're going to have several days. It's not just going to be a Saturday. It's just going to be a breakthrough week of 7 days of going through this. What our speakers will be coming in and going out, but the students are going to be there getting all these experiences.
Nice to house the speakers in one hotel or something.
And then we go deep into this thing and then take people individual, because we are not running out of time. We have time to be able to speak to these people, and they come into us, because also just speaking to people, you need to allow them to speak back, to be able to give you feedback. Like I saw you doing excellently after you finish your speeches, and be able to say to them, what is your take home? That is brilliant. That is getting feedback from the people that spend the whole day listening to you.
That is very, very important indeed. I suppose the other question that comes out of that is, of all these years when you've been running this particular summit, do you have any favorites in terms of guest speakers, any highlights that pop to mind that you want to share?
Well, I will say that all the speakers that have come through the year have added so much value into what we do. But I can remember when Apostle Ken came. He's a very radical man. He's from New York, and he came. He's an African American, and his ideas are just radical about black wealth and people going out and grabbing, and he's a successful man. He's a preacher who actually every year in his city, he gives people golden awards. And this are not just, this is pure gold being given to people, awarding them for what they have done. And so it was an incredible
this is around when?
It was before COVID. It was, 2 years before COVID. And then we brought Robert Burali from Kenya. He is a charismatic guy, a man who jumps on the stage, dramatizes his speeches. How can we forget that? It was an incredible time. And then also when we had Pastor Matthew Ashimolo coming all the way from UK to come and speak to us. The business session was mind-blowing. Currently, he is building a $1 billion US dollar property in Nigeria, literally bringing, Dubai to Nigeria.
Wow.
I remember the water park where there is dancing waters system that is in Dubai Mall. He has brought it to Nigeria.
Wow.
The piece only $6 million US dollars. Just that piece. The man is a man of excellence. He took us to the next level. And then of course COVID came. But then after COVID, you are the first speaker that we called after COVID. So we are still trying to recover. I could see even when you put on the Instagram, some of my mentee already jumped into the session. So we cannot forget, because for you, this is homegrown. This is home. This is me telling them, going to gaps, you must go to CBD, and there's a building you must see. It belongs to the man who stood before you. The connection is just undescribable. And thank you for coming and sharing that day with us.
It was a privilege. It was an honor.
Yeah.
It was an absolute honor. All right. Now it's time for me to ask you about the book, where one can get hold of it, and how do people get to read it, basically? Where do you access the book?
Thank you. The book is on Amazon. You can access it from Amazon. I know Mr. Mogobe will be generous to share the link. So if you look at the book, the way it is designed, my link will take you to my book, because that's how we share the profit of the book. If you look at my book, when you go to my link, it will take you to a page where it's my face with Les Brown. If you just type your story cell, you're gonna find different people with Les Brown, same book. That's the model. But we give you a link that directly take you to you buying the book, and of course the money will come into my account. That's how we do this thing. So you can order the book as a hard cover like this, or a soft copy, and it will be delivered to you. So we also have my page, Result Driven International, which is my business page, and that's why I do motivation coaching. That's my platform there. So you will find the link to this book if you want to buy the book there. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Last question before I ask you about the future outlook. Botswana, the culture. You say your story sells, and often in the culture, people are subdued, people keep to themselves. There's even a saying that if the nail sticks out, the hammer is coming. So you don't want to attract your attention to yourself. So when you give a message, tell your story, open up about your story, people will say, or culturally people are bound to say, you shouldn't attract any attention to yourself. How do we counter that narrative?
I think not be able to share our stories, that's why we have limited success, because we don't even know what our neighbors have been able to achieve and how they've been able to achieve. So we are also a culture of speculations, that if somebody is rich and successful, it's because they are doing something wrong, because we have not given them a platform to be able to tell us what they have been able to do. So it is important for stories to be shared. Stories of success needs to be shared. We need to encourage Botswana to read. I hear people saying that a lot of Botswana today are writing a lot of books and so on. No, we have a deficit of the stories of Botswana. We have a deficit. We still need more people to tell us how they succeeded. We want people who are succeeding in farming to write books on farming. Those who are succeeding in the soil, in property, to write books on property. Everyone who is successful, who is a role model, write a book. Let us have a collection of literacy of Botswana, telling our stories from our country, from this great republic. We cannot be a nation that does not have books that are written by our own in our libraries. It's an error that we need to correct. So every single one who have a story to tell, please write a book. If you don't know how to write a book, contact us. we will help you to coin your story so that you can be able to share it with people. And we are grateful that Mom Nuggets of Grit is out. And this book here is the story of a man. It takes you from where he began. So there is no more speculation. You're not going to tell us that Mr. Mogobe is using a snake somewhere in the hills, because whatever he's using is inside the book. It's now an open secret. Every single person can get this. And let me tell you this. Ignorance is too expensive. You can't afford it. If you want to succeed, you are going to have to spend money on this. My mentorship with John Maxwell, I was paying $35,700 a month for an entire year. And people say, we see you with John Maxwell. Out of that investment of paying over $600,000 to be trained by that man, my company today, just the speaking and coaching company, it has a turnaround of millions, because knowledge, quality knowledge is expensive. Quality knowledge cannot be downloaded somewhere. If it's downloaded somewhere, it's not quality. The secret of man is in you going. This is certified story of Mr. Mogobe, packaged for you. So this is the original product. Don't go and sit with somebody who come from Kanye and they tell you what they think about him. This is where to get it. So get this copy as soon as possible and dig into it. And as you are reading, share whatever you are learning. Go to his Facebook page, Instagram, and share what is affecting you. Definitely they will respond. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that sales pitch, a wonderful sales pitch. Now, we normally want to give our guests an opportunity to paint the future for us. If you're looking 20, 30 years, what can we expect from, you're a brand, from a brand, Dave Grace, and from your businesses. Paint a picture for us so that you can excite us about what's coming attractions.
We have named our church the University of Life. So it has 7 departments, which are the 7 mountains of the society. So we have the School of Business. It has people who are in business training people there in the church, using biblical principle to teach people. We have the School of Family to produce godly families and godly marriages and relationship. We have the School of Arts and Entertainment. I am a songwriter. Some of you have seen me on TV. You have seen my songs on Tracy Gospel, on One Gospel. My wife is a singer. The latest offering, she did it last year. She recorded with Omega Kuno, one of the greatest South African gospel artists, who is also coming this December, and others to Palape. Thousands of people will be gathered there on the 29th, 30th, and 31st. So we have the School of Arts, where we teach people how to write songs. We teach people how to play instruments, because we are saying that not everybody is going to succeed by being an academic. Others are going to succeed through arts. So most of these children would never afford to go to a music school. So we have brought the drums, we have brought the keyboards, and somebody from Palape get to play on an 85,000 puller keyboard and being taught by people who are successful. We have the School of Government and Leadership for those who wants to add value as members of parliament, as councillors, or they want to lead their organization. So we have the School of Leadership, and then we also have the School of Education. And we are now in that school saying just getting educated in the institution is not enough, because there is a lot of misinformation going on today, and misinformation is more dangerous than education. So we are trying now, as university students are learning the university, we are also training them in soft skills on the side, and that is what is in our School of Education. We have the School of Religion, where we teach people that Christianity is not attending church, it's a lifestyle. So now we are a unique church because most of people in our church are young people and young adults. So it's from the age of 12 to 45. You're going to see a lot of young people in that church. So we have divided the church into all these departments so that people can go to every department for a time. So if you want to start a family, you must enroll in the School of Family. So every year, all the 7 mountains, I teach about them. There is a month specifically for them. What am I looking at? I want to see in the next 10, 20 years, giants emerging from every one of that to influence our society. because the society is influenced from all those spheres. But now we're talking about positive influence. I don't have anything against influencers, but influencers that are negative can destroy culture. But influencers that are positive, like Mogobe, can change culture and so on. So we are guarding against that by ensuring that even though you are famous outside there, ensure that what comes out of your mouth will build a nation, will sell the nation. I can give you this example. I was somewhere with some people in UK, and they were talking bad about their country. Oh, in our country, this and this, our president is like this. And they said, what about you, sir? You are just quiet. I said, I come from a beautiful country where we have free education, where it's very difficult for you to see somebody under the bridge in our country. They were taken aback. Somebody has to complain. I said, no, I'm an ambassador of my nation. I'm here to sell my nation.
Absolutely.
I cannot say something bad to my nation in the presence of a stranger. I sell my nation because that's the only nation I have.
Yes.
And God saw it fit that I'm born in Botswana. And I love this nation, and I love Palape, where I was born from, and I want to see that place transformed. I want to see Botswana transformed.
Wow.
So I'm using that. That is my mandate. That's what I want to see. That's David Gray's pursuit, to raise the next generation leaders of young people that have God, have wisdom, have skill, have character, have integrity.
Wow.
Yeah.
So much there to digest. That's beautiful. Now, this is a time where you get to ask me a question, sir.
Thank you so much. Of course. Here comes my question. I want to know why someone like you that has so much money or want to sit down here and spend so much, thousands of people are giving out information for free.
It's a labor of love. I love the country. I love the people. And I noticed that there was a gap in terms of content consumption, content availability, where we tend to replicate things that are coming from the US in a disjointed manner, in a non-contextual manner. So once I discovered this gap, I found it was necessary to set this thing up. And of course, we have those guiding principles which I share with every podcast: enthuse, energize, inspire, and to empower. So there's an urging in me based on the Abrahamic thinking of the reason why Abraham was blessed, so that he can become a blessing. My belief is that the precise reason for my blessing was that I can become a blessing. And what better way to create a platform where you share free information? I know that sometimes our people, when things are free, they sort of discount them or they dismiss them. But notwithstanding that, there are people who tell me that they discover this channel and they binge watch because they didn't know such information exists about the country, and it impacts them. And business people in the 4 years we've been on who told me that they've opened their businesses, having been inspired by this. So that is the precise reason. And for me, it's a labor of love. It's a way of giving back. But there's been a funny, interesting benefit as well. This benefit being that as a result of the platform, we are now, as a brand, attracting other brands, attracting people to ourselves. As people connect with us, there's a word that I like using, which is cross-pollination of ideas. They're now able to cross-pollinate. I would like to bet, for instance, that the reason why you and I met is because of this platform. I'd like to bet, for instance, the reason why you are able to invite me to your conference to speak is because of this platform. So there's been hidden benefits that I'm very, very grateful to the Almighty for. But the principal reason was a selfish reason of self-empowerment, but realizing that self-empowerment can only occur if I empower others.
Thank you for what you do for this beautiful nation, and I hope that Botswana will take advantage of this beautiful platform, this kind of education that you need. If you follow this platform for 4 years, it's going to add to what you already have, and it's going to cause you to be able to walk the path that you are supposed to walk. So thank you so much for what you do for us.
Thank you, Muruti. Thank you, Apostle. Now you can leave the viewers with one very, very, very last message, a sort of condensed message summarizing all this, and leave them with one last word of wisdom.
To you that are listening to us, I want to tell you that your story sells. You have an incredible story that is developing right now. You are becoming a wonderful person. You are being refined like gold in the fire. I want you to begin to value who you are, value your talents, your abilities, and believe that if Mr. Mogobe can do it, if David Grace can do it, you can also do it. And know that you are an inspiration to other people. May God bless your dreams, bless your future, and bless any activity that you are involved in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Tell them all your contact details, online and offline.
Well, if you want to follow me, starting with our cell number that you can reach out to my office is +267 7123 6692, +267 7123 6692. Or you can follow me, David Ini Grace, on Facebook, or you can follow me, Coach David Grace, on Instagram. You can follow us also in our YouTube pages. They are all there in our result-driven page. You can follow me there, where I'm sharing Monday motivation. Every Monday, I'm sharing a nugget there in our result-driven international page. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.